scrap of paper. So NGOs have a false sense of who we are, and which I feel we shouldn't have. We are a legal pigment. We are created by a legal process, and we are not here. Whereas AMS is a community-based organization. It's of the people. It's membership-based, and it's something that has to do not with interventions, but with their lives. And if you were listening to the first speaker, I think her name was Parvati, when she said, we got a new life. So that's something we have to realize when we talk about development. It's not about log frames. We all are hung up on log frames now and how we make this huge strategic plan for the next 3 years and 5 years. It's about people's lives. It's about their everyday lives, and that's what they were telling us today. That's why they get emotional. We don't get emotional. How do you get emotional about a log frame? I haven't shed a tear over a log frame. It's very difficult to sit in front of a computer and look at this fantastic log frame with strategic objectives, goals, activities, blah, 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 measurement, impact indicators. How can you cry over it? Cannot peel an onion. But that's what their lives are about. It's like peeling an onion, and it really brings you to tears. So, from the human rights violations, what happened was, working on this, in one village called Tetakad, in the space of 1 month, 3 women died of childbirth. All of them were around 20 or below 20. All of them, it was their first child. And all 3 deaths, actually 6 deaths, it was 3 children and 3 mothers. All 6 deaths were totally and completely preventable. And it happened at a time when we were expecting our child. And realizing that my wife Mali was alive and our child was alive only because we had access to healthcare, only because we could afford healthcare. And then came a big debate: should we continue to be political only? Tell them, no, wait till society has changed, there is social change, and you have got justice. Till then, your women and children have to die. Or should we do something? The community decision was we had to do something. And that's where, in 87, there was a slight shift in our work, or an addition to our work, where we went into the second phase, where we took on a lot of development interventions. This phase is like any typical NGO, so I'm not spending a lot of time on it. We got into economic development, we got into community health, and we got into education, the typical kind of things that are there. Only thing I want to mention is, here, we were pressurized by our funding agencies to call economic development income generation. Those days that was the, you had to fit in here to have income generation. We refused, because we were not talking about income generation. We were talking about economic development, which meant building the economy of the local communities. And we, being an agricultural or a plantation economy called P, land was at the heart of it. And that's why we said we'll take land back. And then when the discussion came of what to plant on the land, we decided to plant tea. And we chose tea because that was the mainstream economy, rather than choosing any fringe activities. So I guess from phase 2, the development interventions, we moved into the third phase, which are community institutions, creating community institutions. This happened because our health work, which was primarily community health and preventive health, people started coming asking for curative services. We tried many experiments, government hospitals, private, local missionary hospitals, private hospitals, nothing worked. We even ended up having a small bed in our own office, all that. People started demanding a hospital. I refused. I was one of the big opponents of the idea of starting a hospital. Because here I was seeing myself as the school activist, political activist, mobilizing people for their rights. And now suddenly trying to become like Mother Teresa and running a hospital for the poor, seemed very reactionary. But thinking about it, and because the people were consistently, the community was completely diverse, they were consistently asking for a hospital of their own, I started thinking a lot and reflecting on it. And then I borrowed a leaf from the Christian missionaries in India. Because the Christians are only 2% of the population in India, but they are a very powerful 2%. Because till recently, they control all the health and education institutions in the country, including this one. They are one of the first management schools in the country. Afterwards, others have come. But for a long time, all the best health and education institutions in the country were controlled by Christians, Christian missionaries. And that gave them power. If they control the financial institutions, they will be running this country, as is the case in many other countries. So, would it be possible to have an institution owned by the Adivasis? That's where the issue of ownership comes. Very, very important. Which should give them power and change their power relationships with the non-Adivasis. And so we set up Ashwini which is the head as a separate organization. And this is a completely community-owned institution. I will come to that in a minute, how the structure is, how we have structured all this. But basically, just to give you one or two things of how we have two challenges. If this idea was to work, how it being used as a political tool as well as just a health service provider. The political dimension of it would work if one, it had to be a center of excellence. There's no point in giving poor solutions to poor people. So if there's a third-rate hospital, nobody would have bothered. The second thing is what Michelle said, it had to be seen to be owned by the community. It could not be a hospital where these good guys, the reincarnation of Mother Teresa, is coming and doing something for these poor sorry tribals. So it had to be a center of excellence and it had to be owned by the community. And this was our two challenges. The center of excellence part got solved because two more brilliant doctors joined us, who are there till today. The ownership part, we engineered, we did a lot of things. I just mentioned one of them, there were one or two things. One was, if a non-tribal in the area wanted to get admission in the Adivasi hospital, he had to go to the village Sangam and get a letter from there. If he didn't get a letter, he could not be admitted. And who did he have to get a letter from? Sometimes from his own water diagram. Immediately his behavior with this tribal changes, because the tribal has something he wants. So he starts behaving a little better. And because of shortage of time, I can give you any number of anecdotes and stories of where this was actually manifested, where non-tribals completely changed the way they related to tribals because they owned the hospital. The other thing we did right from beginning, from day one in accord and with the hospital and with everything else, we only employ tribals. If anybody else has to work, it's because that skill is not available to the community. But then the mandate of those people is to transfer that skill to the community. So now the hospital is actually mentored about 14 kids who in 2020 we hope will become doctors to run the hospital. So they are being mentored by the hospital. The hospital's job is to train kids in school, starting with school children, to help them to enter medical school. So they come, they spend the holidays in the hospital. We have 16-year-olds standing by the doctor assisting in an operation. So we want to give them a head start, because by the time they enter medical college, they should know what a fourth-year student has already done. They have that experience. Then we set up education. We got into a school. I won't go to the whole story of the school. It's not just a school, but it's not an outreach thing. But one interesting thing is what Michelle mentioned again about oral histories. Children go to school today. It's the worst thing to do to a tribal child, send a child to school. Because you destroy everything that's tribal in that child. You teach them competition because of exams. I had my sister-in-law from the US came and volunteered in the school for a while. And with the teacher training program, she was very upset. She came home one day really, really upset. She said, "What is this? You romanticize these tribals and you said they are such good people, they are honest and everything. These children were cheating. These teacher trainees are all cheating because the answer sheets are all the same. They copied from one another." And there was nothing I could do to convince her that why this was. So I went and talked to these trainees and said, "What happened?" They were very positive. "Yeah, we didn't copy. We helped each other. She knew the answer, so she told me, so I wrote the answer." And then they took up, she already said it was a community effort to answer the exam, the question answer. And this American sister of mine cannot understand this at all. Which is better? And so here what we are trying to do is also develop our curriculum. These children learn the history of America and Ashoka and God knows what is in our history textbook. They don't know their own history. And because they have moved away from their parents when they come to school, they don't learn it. The oral histories are not passed on in their villages. So the answer is not no, don't send them to school. The answer is to change our schools. So we are developing our own curriculum. Many of the teachers in our school are illiterate. We have community members who come and teach in the school who don't know how to read or write. We published a textbook by 4 illiterate people. They don't read or write, but they developed the script working with the Indian Institute of Indian Languages. And they get the content for the first textbook in the tribal language. And so they are listed there as authors. And so on. So, let's try to do that. Now, what happened was in 1995, we had a big Mahasabha. And at this Mahasabha, the question was, where are we when we started, where are we now, and where do we go from here? There was a big discussion. And at that point, everybody took the hospital. We had not yet started the school at that point. They already had the hospital. And the entire community felt that this was the answer. And at the Mahasabha, they decided the word self-reliance was first introduced. The way they did it in their language was to say we want to stand on our own feet. When we translate to English, we call it self-reliance. And the path that they chose was to have their own institutions. And the institutions they identified in 1995 was the hospital, which is already there, an educational institution, a marketing institution, and a financial institution or a bank. And I was very interested to read the thing that Madhukar has written in the booklet for this conference. He has given some 8 things, I think, about self-reliance. And this is very good about it. There's something like Madhukar writes that these are the 8 things, and we have actually tried to deal with these 8 things and creating institutions for these 8 things. And so we have now been working a lot on this. And so what? Sorry, the wrong one. And what we have now set up, and this is the ecosystem, to use the language of the center. We have at the core the Adivasi Munadra Sangam. This is the community organization. This owns and manages everything else. So we have the Ashwini as a separate institution, separate organization, but the board of all these organizations, including Ashwini, is appointed by the Adivasi Munadra Sangam. We have the Jyotya, the trust which takes care of education. And at this Mahasabha, the question was, how do we fund health and education? Because it's nice. Joe's point is very nice. You don't have course, why should you have course solutions for poor people, but they cost. So how do we fund it? And how is there self-reliance if we can't afford it? And that's why we thought of having our own collective wealth of starting a plantation. And in a 176-acre plantation, we managed to raise a soft loan and bought the land. And that is now an asset with the community. We also set up the Adivasi Tea Leaf Marketing Society, which was to help market the tea leaves of the Adivasi. I'll come back to this part in a minute. We are now in the process of setting up a series of collective enterprises, not individual enterprises. And then we set up Just Change again a few years ago, which is a marketing initiative. That's what I talked about last year. But there's no time now. I think I've already exceeded my time. So, but Just Change is basically a cooperative of producers, consumers, and investors. But it's helping people to take control of the market. And this is different from the other institutions because this works with other community groups across the country. And now currently, we are working in the last institution, which is the community bank. Not microfinance. It's a bank where they own it, they are shareholders, they own the equity. And I've been inviting all of you all to, when you are opening bank accounts, in about 2 years, by the time you graduate, as soon as all of you graduate, watch this space, don't open your account with ICICI Bank. Open it with us. We'll give you all the facilities that ICICI Bank is giving. Park your money there, let your money work for the poor. Why put your salary into any one of these banks? Have you seen the profits the banks are making? Let's look at the last 3-4 days. ICICI third quarter profit up by 23% or whatever, in a high percentage. Their profits are just with whose money? Your money. All of them open bank accounts there. Now And this is where we come back to what Michelle said with technology. It doesn't matter where my children have not entered the bank. Their bank accounts, they never even entered the bank. Because they do everything on the internet. So we can have the technology, we have the technology, we have our own bank. We are in the process of setting up that bank. Lots of hurdles. Fortunately for us, the Reserve Bank of India has got onto this bandwagon of financial inclusion, and a good friend of ours has been appointed to head the Committee on Financial Inclusion. So we're talking to him and seeing whether we can relax the rules by which we can actually create a decentralized community bank. But under the present banking rules, it's very difficult for us to set up a bank. So whether within the legal framework we can set up a bank, this is something we are working on. So this is the whole kind of work we are doing. I didn't intend to take so much of time, but just to explain this long journey did take time. But the point that I want to really make here is, please don't think of development. We are rethinking development. I say, the theme of this conference should be not rethinking development, is forgetting about development. Let us start thinking about social justice. Let's bring that back on the agenda. Because today, more than in 74, the social injustice is much, much more. It's more cruel. The gap is much, much wider. Never before in human history, never before in human history have we seen the accumulation and concentration of wealth that we have seen today. Why can Bill Gates dictate to countries of Africa what their policy should be on HIV/AIDS? Because he has money. The power of Steve Jobs, now I don't know what his power is. God knows, he must be, I don't know, those of you are familiar with Christian creation stories. The apple played a very important role in the creation stories. And now they take the apple back, God knows what's happening in heaven. So there's the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, the Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, you know that all of them are management students, you must be studying these characters. Warren Buffett made a killing in the so-called recession. He emerged the single largest beneficiary globally. When all the share prices crashed, Armament had bought all of it. And as soon as the US government and Gordon Brown from the UK bailed out the banks and the share prices went up, he sold it. And pocketed the difference. And we all talk about what a philanthropic man he is. Thing has happened to his life. He gives away billions, but he's making trillions. Or you take Vijay Mallya today. How many thousand crores? 5,000 crores years back. Did you read the papers a few years ago when the government wrote off, UK government wrote off the farmers' debt of 6,000 crores? All over India, what a hue and cry. And saying, this is what will bring down the country. This is what, and here they have one man going to write off 5,000 crores. And State Bank of India, in all its wisdom, is going to buy that equity in that company. Which has, because in their books they've shown this as equity and not as loss. And they're buying a non-performing asset and showing off in their books that they have recovered equity and so they are alright. They recovered it. And Vijay Mallya still continues his parties, he still produces his calendar, he still runs the F1 races. Nothing is touched about Vijay Mallya and he's running away with 5,000 crores. Farmers, millions of farmers, 6,000 crores. We all shed tears about our terrible socialist government. So everything is skewed, everything is lopsided. And you are being trained, even in an institute like this, I beg you. I challenge every one of you students studying here on SIMB. Sit with me, give me your syllabus, I'll show you how you are being conned into maintaining the status quo. You will wear your business suits, because that is what is needed in the corporate sector. Otherwise, you won't be respected. You will start thinking in long frames. You will start thinking of the bottom line. You will start thinking of rate of return. You will start thinking of market efficiencies. You have got all these things, and all these things boil down to one thing: how to make more money for somebody, how to accumulate more money to something. Are you not anything about social justice? And at least, and I'll end on this note, a note of hope, is India has passed the most radical legislation in the world when they passed the Forest Rights Act. Because this one piece of legislation has corrected a historical wrong, and the legislation itself says it, its preamble is that it's to correct a historical wrong. Their natural resources belonging to the tribals, which they have used for centuries, where their rights over it was never recognized, and it was totally taken away. The Forest Rights Act now squarely puts this back in their hands. And because of that, Vedanta was stopped in its tracks. Because of the Gram Sabha says, Madhukar refers to it in his paper, in the stage. That Gram Sabhas now, ordinary tribal people are able to stop it because they have legislation. I know this is taught to you in your management schools. How do you implement the Forest Rights Act? That's a bigger management challenge than how to work for ICICI Bank. I would rather come here and teach and work with you all on implementing these things, how to manage this. Because the procedural part of this act, the act is beautiful to read. Try to implement it. It's more difficult than starting a community bank. So come, all of you young people come. We'll give you challenges. We'll give you challenges that will give you meaning in your lives. We'll give you challenges where you accumulate goodwill and not bank balances. We'll give you challenges that will make you sleep well at night. Wake up in the morning looking forward to the day, and not wake up on Monday looking forward to Saturday morning when you have the weekend to party, because you take 5 days of your life. We are finding, on an average, I get about 5 to 10 letters in a month from young people who have worked for about 5 years and who are totally frustrated. So don't waste 5 years of your life. Come and give that 5 years to us. So with that dedication and that challenge, I'll end. And I hope when I go back, my inbox is going to be flooded with letters from all of you saying that we want to take up the challenge. And this challenge is much more exciting than Aam Aadmi Party or Nada or anybody else. It's a real challenge. It's working with real communities and it's bringing about real change. Be an instrument in that. Thank you.
The first challenge was well accepted. After the lunch, nobody was sleeping. Thank you, sir. And I, for myself also, for giving you the chance to ask. Isn't it? So it was a fantastic session. Joe played like a one-day match, then Michelle came with the T20, and finally Stan made it a test match. And all of us kept crying and Stan, and it's epic like storytelling, fantastic. And it was all reminding us, me at least, of 70s. Madhukar ji, आप भी उस गाने में आएंगे क्या? So, but finally, हम लोग उसमें क्वेश्चन सेशन रोक दिए थे. वेटो लगा के स्टैंड ने वेटो लगा दिया था तो रोक दिए थे. Now the question session is open. Anybody can fire and just mention for whom this question is. Okay.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. This is Pankaj Arora, and I work with rural communities in setting up plantations and all. This is a question for Michelle. I wanted to know where all the community radio can be used and what are like the beneficial changes she would have seen by using a community radio.
I'll be very quick because I don't know if anyone's interested. So the Government of India under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting allows communities anywhere in India to set up their own radio stations on the 88 to 108 FM bandwidth, where also private radio players are allowed. You have to be a registered NGO to set up your own radio station. So that itself, actually the policy itself is a problem because it allows only registered NGOs. If somebody else is living in the village cannot set it up. You need to have 3 years of existence. What we found is again, coming back to the philanthropic problem, so the community radio sector is generally a funded sector because an NGO can set up a radio station. The policy says that the radio station should be fully owned by the community. The members, the management, etc. should be completely owned. As and when this is happening, some brilliant stuff is happening. Bundelkhand has a radio station set up by DA. You see outside the radio station people coming with their tablas and all these performers who have never had an opportunity to sing their folk songs, and they're sitting outside and they've been given a voice. The flip side, you may also have some radio stations where the content is very NGO heavy, very not entertaining and message and patronizing. Communities also want entertainment, right? I mean, we all listen to radio because we're entertained. So the NGO sector sometimes tends to forget this. The radio is not a vehicle to say, HIV is a problem. It's a vehicle for the local community to say, it's your birthday, I would like to wish you happy birthday, just like private FM is doing. I have a cow to say, I want to advertise on the radio station so that women are kharid. So as and when it is very local and sort of powerful, when the community identifies, it's a success. You have in Gurgaon, there is Gurgaon Ki Awaaz is doing very well. There are many examples, and it's a fully developed sector. But as I said, excessive NGOization has created other problems. So, but the licenses and everything is all by the government of India. In America, the community radio is used as an electronic civil disobedience tool. When people say we don't care whether the American government is going to give us licenses, the airwaves belong to us. I will set up my radio station, I will broadcast as I like, and talk against the government on the airwaves. And then they have an institution that comes and sort of pirate radio, which for some reason in India, because of the lack of social cohesion and the lack of mobility, communities, there is no pirate radio in India. There is nobody who's doing an underground kind of a pirate radio, which, yeah. Because it's very simple, right? You have to just assemble something and you can broadcast it on air. You can read the MIT.nic.in site, it has the guidelines. And you can just do a search on RF and community radio. There's a lot of material available. There's a lot of people working on community media. There's a lot of material, but most people don't know. Also, the problem is that the policy came a bit late in time. You're talking about terrestrial radio when there's television, there's internet. It's not that exciting anymore. How many of you listen to radios? You don't know at one point you have to buy radio sets. There are no radio sets available because the Indian government has woken up too late. You can do an internet radio today. You don't need licenses, you don't need permission, you don't need anything. You just start. So that's the problem, which is why the movement hasn't taken off. And government is not giving spectrum easily. They say, in Bombay, for instance, they say there's a defense problem, the airport. They're not giving the spectrum to communities easily because they want to sell it. They want to auction it. There is a conspiracy theory, as I said, which people don't agree, but there is a conspiracy theory.
Next.
I'm K.C. Mishra. My question to all three of you. And first of all, congratulations for the great initiative taken in your respective areas. Being we are in the midst of the young people are attracted towards the business plan of the respective organizations. What exactly is the financial plan, and is it sustainable? And what is your advice for the young people to join it and make it sustainable and have a career in this sector? Thank you.
Gandhiji, an old man at that time, but who has come into this world at least 100 years before his time. He gave the call of self-reliance. But after Gandhiji, our governments and we ourselves, we forgot the word self, and now only we speak about reliance. So that is what we understand about self-reliance. Gandhiji, immediately after freedom, India gained freedom. They said 4 words, exactly 4 words in English. Back to the villages. we understood the wrong way. We turned our backs to the villages. So, as soon as we don't rediscover ourselves, and the people's business plan do not become our own business plan, and the people's self-reliance do not become also coupled becomes our self-reliance, then we will speak like business houses about a business plan, which is ultimately we speak about the triple bottom line, but there will be no triple bottom line as I understand it, but only the financial bottom line, and all the other two are forgotten in our rush to get that financial bottom line. So, I think we, as Stan was saying, I agree fully, we have to rewrite in our educational institutions, even the mainstream education institutions like business management institutes, this whole thing of what is a business plan. Maybe, yes, if you want to work very hard and create and work for a company which takes water, puts some color and puts some sugar and then puts some gas and captures, and you market that and you think your life is fantastic because you get a good pay. But who laughs all the way to the bank is something which you like to see. It is not the poor man. It is not the ordinary people of this world who benefit by that. In fact, their water is being stolen like what happened in Kerala. So I think we will have to really re-examine where we want to go. If this is what we want to do and it's not, I won't condemn that person. Well, please go ahead, but there may be the exception who want to do something different. And for them, we have to have several Madhuka Shuklas to play their guitars and protest songs. We will have to again sing the Yellow Submarine.
Next.
Hello, sir. Sir, my question is to all the three. All these initiatives are, don't you think it has been taken as a yet by each of you separately? Why it not be, why all these NGOs who are having the same mindset can be integrated and see a large difference in the entire India? Because as Sir said, till now you can able to help 20 people to become a medical student. He has been fighting for 25 years. He has been changing for the development for 25 years. If it is integrated, many of all the people who are thinking about the Adivasi protectors and all, if it is in everywhere in India who are all having the same mindset and they are all integrated in the same thing, if the reach would be much more and we can achieve the goal very quick. Because if it continues even like this, then it will take another 100 years for the welfare of those societies and all those things. As you said, now the gap has already been increased before, after though you are all working on that thing. So why not an integrated thing? It is not a networking.
I just give my 2 minutes for I think. When it comes to larger issues, for instance, when you talked about the Forest Rights Act, the entire nation was, all the tribal rights groups collectively fought for it. There were millions of tribals on the streets saying that we want our natural resources back. So for such efforts, there is definitely a collaboration and a networking happening. But for instance, if he is working at the ground level, there's a geographical reality. And I don't think that more people can necessarily impact it faster. Plus, you're getting into the trap of that target orientation that I talked about. That in 25 years we have to achieve this, and it will take 100 years. We are not achieving anything in any case. You need to understand this, that social change is not a time-driven process. So if you have 100 NGOs in an area, or 100 good thinking citizens, that doesn't mean anything is going to change if you can't change the fundamental structural inequalities, which is where people like you generally sit, where the inequalities start, not at the bottom. So this understanding is not there with most people, right? There could be 100 stands in his area, there will be 200 people like that. Nothing's going to change because the entire structure is faulty. The whole capitalist mode of development is faulty. So it's not about the NGOs. The NGOs are a victim of the same system. So how much can they change? And if you don't ask these fundamental questions, then there is no point in these discussions.
Let me just add one point to this. My fear in what you are saying, if you do this, performance studies are not possible. I don't think it is because India is so diverse and actually it's moved towards decentralization and not to centralization. But my fear about centralization and the theory that you are putting forward, if it at all is possible, is this answers the first question. It will guarantee all of you jobs. Because such a huge organization would require people like you all to manage it. Our tribals and these women and these people that we are talking about are not, villages are not going to manage their projects. We need graduates from IIMB and all that to graduate. So if you want to secure yourself a job, what you were saying, let's just pay for a big organization. Like Reliance, or ICICI Bank. So it doesn't work that way. They are working with communities, and communities are local. And therefore solutions have to be local. But like Michelle rightly pointed out, there will be issues on which communities from across the country can come together.
More questions? Sorry, one lady from that side. Please, should not be in the back. After this, we will end this session.
Hi. My question is to Joe. Actually, any one of you can take it. Like when you plan to start up, suppose you do not have a name in the industry or within among the government officials. When you take your proposal to the government, how easy or difficult it is to get an approval and what kind of timelines does it take?
The government in no case that I know of accepts you because you have a good idea or a good plan. They, at least in my case, they began to accept and to, in some ways, absorb the ideas that I put forward and began to even little funding because I became a nuisance to them. To get rid of this nuisance, so that we won't come for at least next 2 months, let us do something. But having got rid of this nuisance, and they are watching very eagerly what you are doing. And when you succeed, they are amazed. Oh God, how could this fellow? No, this must be an exception. So I've often heard this. This must be an island of excellence. It cannot be repeated. So then you go back, okay, I succeeded, so we succeeded. People could do this. Why don't you fund further? Okay, they fund further. And then you succeed further. As you succeed, you see, what an innovative program we funded. So, but for our money they couldn't have done. So, everybody wants to be behind, bet on a winning horse. So, ultimately, if you want to, I'm sorry to say this, but we do not know that the World Bank visits the government, the IMF visits, the donor agencies visit, big politicians and bureaucrats from the center visit. They take to a Gramika's village for successful water and sanitation. They don't call us. Because we might say, oh, these are the people who did it. We assisted them. It's the government which wants to take the credit. Of late, I have realized that you can either get the cooperation of the government or you can get the credit, but you cannot get both. And in this case, we have said we will take the cooperation and not the credits. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Mr. Hello, do you hear me? Yes. And Joe, and all of you, I think after this, I should hand it over to you. Please.
I thank the speakers and the moderator for a wonderful session. I would now request the moderator, Mr. Amitabh Ghosh, to kindly hand over mementos to the speakers.
A silver ball.
This time we won't break.
I now request Neha to facilitate our moderator, Mr. Amitabh Ghosh, with the moment.
Social equality. Social equality.
With that, we come to an end of our first session. We will now break for tea. Since we are running a little late, we'll keep the tea break for only 20 minutes. So please be back here by 4:15. Also, please know that there are topics put up for the breakout session on that wall. Please go through them and add your names to them. 2 charts have been left blank. If you have a topic in your mind, you can add that.